Welcome everybody. My name is William Marsh. I'm the Director of Clinical Education here at Premier Research Labs, and I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Kelly Barron, based out of South Carolina. She is a functional medicine expert and has a specialty in women's health, which we're diving into here for the month of June at Premier Research Labs. And Dr. Kelly, I just want to say thank you so much for coming live to record this podcast, and I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Well, thank you, William, for having me on. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk today. Women's health, I'm incredibly passionate about. So I'm looking forward to a fun conversation.
Yeah. So just for our viewers, I know you've kind of been in this space for close to well over 20 years. Talk to me and talk to the audience, like what drew you to women's health? I know it's personal to you, right? But what called you to specialize in such a dynamic area of wellness? Because it is something that there's so many variables to really take into account when you're looking to optimize the hormonal matrix in the body and beyond. So,
well, like you said, it's personally being a woman and a Gen Xer coming from a background where moms don't really tell you too much, and getting into the alternative healthcare space and learning about it. That's really the beginning of where my eyes were open that we don't know nearly as much as what we should know. Our grandmothers, our mothers, they're giving us like the Disney version. They don't tell us anything about hormones or the changes in women's health. So I went to chiropractic school and really became passionate about that sector, about women's health. Pregnancy is really where I started with pre and postpartum. And then obviously as I aged and began to get into the shifting hormone space, and again, not knowing what was going on, and it's not really talked about, especially Western medicine, I started to focus on women's health and perimenopause and menopause. That's the medical educational version of it. The even more personal part of it was I was assaulted when I was in my early 20s, physically assaulted, and starting to learn about mindset and women and fight or flight and just our own personalities and how hormones play into it. That's really what started driving me into trying to bring this all in for females. The fitness, nutrition, hormone supplementation, and mindset aspect of it.
That's awesome. And I'm so sorry to hear that was in your past. That's horrible. But it sounds like you found an opening to really, change the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of women in your work. And I just want to say thank you for doing that. Your background is really interesting. You're a chiropractor and an acupuncturist. So I know you bring a very unique perspective to women's health. In your experience and over the years, what do you believe is kind of the most common contributor to hormonal dysfunction in women that we are seeing a rise in today?
There's a lot of factors. You could look right into, first and foremost, just start with our food, and that's becoming huge in the news right now. Just what happens to our food system, what we carry our food in, our containers, environmental factors, these are all having a major role in our hormone balance. You're getting estrogens from plastic, that's changing the balance. I would say that's the biggest driver. We go through, as women, our big 3 to 4 hormones that are typically talked about are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and cortisol. And our hormones fluctuate. As soon as we start getting into puberty, our hormones are always on a roller coaster, whereas men, they do decline in age, but it's a very slow decline, a very manageable decline. So what I'm seeing most in clients is a decrease in estrogen, conversely, an estrogen dominance as progesterone also decreases. So estrogen is the queen of female hormones that will have a big role in bone health, skin, hair, mood, energy, reproduction, everything. That it is the queen of female hormones. Progesterone is basically estrogen's assistant, for lack of better terms. Then we have testosterone, which we females do have in small quantities compared to our male counterparts. But those have a really important role in just our overall confidence, libido, our energy, muscle strength, stamina. So it's very important. And then the fourth biggest one that we have out there right now that we're seeing such imbalances and swings in is cortisol. And you'll see that across the board, male and female. Why it's important to females is cortisol is this stress hormone, and it'll regulate sleep. It is increased due to stress. We'll have weight gain, mood swings. We'll get that wired, but we're really tired feeling. If you take that and you combine it to women's fluctuating hormones, we have the perfect storm. It puts us into wild swings of hormones as compared to males. So those are the four big hormones that we're talking about in the news, in the media, in medicine right now. Most people know about them, they just don't know enough about them.
And it feels like a lot of practitioners, especially, when we're working here at Premier Research Labs, a lot of practitioners like to jump straight into hormones. Like they like to do analogs and topicals. And, a lot of times when we're working with our practitioner network, we're actually empowering them to work maybe more at a foundational base layer to optimize kind of how the hormonal matrix is performing in the body. When you have a patient come in, and I actually want to go, another question I want to dive into is, what are some symptoms, right, of somebody that has hormonal imbalances beyond lab markers that you always look for? But how do you usually take in a client and consult them to really start working with their hormones, maybe not using topical hormones, not using, something that you're taking internally? Because a lot of people want to play with those levers, but truthfully, when you're looking at longevity and like really creating hormonal harmony in the body, a lot of times it's working at a grassroots foundational level to nourish the body up to optimal performance in regards to hormones. So would love your thoughts in that regard.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. So you have to look at someone, every human is different, and you have to look at them as a whole. So you can't just bring someone in, and I know we all want to do this because it's still hormones being the big buzzword and the new player on the block. We want that magic pill. We want to feel good right away. We want all these symptoms to go away. That is great if that's the route that you chose to go. But you have to start at the basic building blocks of the human body. And you're going to start with nutrition, fitness, and you're going to get into the mental health. And you're going to look at those aspects first. And are there weaknesses there? Are there places within your nutrition and your exercise that need to be fortified first before you start dealing in the world of hormones? Because those basic foundational blocks can have such a positive effect on your hormonal imbalance that there are people who go through these changes in life, especially women. They don't need hormone replacement therapy. They need to do more of the fitness, nutrition, supplementation, meditation, things of that nature. And I like to start everybody there, find those weaknesses, work on those weaknesses. Once you've gotten past that, if hormones seem to be the next viable step, that's where you go.
Makes total sense. How do you, words of wisdom maybe for, we have a lot of practitioners that listen to our Premier Living podcast and, our content here. And how would you advise a practitioner when a client's coming in and they're like, I want to take hormones. They're like, I need a heavy hitter. I want the silver bullet. Why should I even get engaged in diet and lifestyle strategies to modulate, the system? Any like success strategies you've kind of had in getting clients to kind of adopt that?
I think, again, it goes back to there's just, especially women, there's a lot of information out there about testosterone and males and hormone replacement. It is, with females, we came out and then we got the big cancer scare, like women shouldn't do hormone replacement therapy. Now we're seeing the women come in and they want it right away because their girlfriend has it or their sister or their mother. But you have to, as a practitioner, you have to assume they don't have a lot of knowledge about hormones. They only know what someone's told them, third party. They don't have a really good grasp. And you have to break it down to the smallest possible form for them. Just take it down to a very simple explanation. Like I said, you have estrogen, that's the queen of your hormones. You have progesterone, that's the assistant. And if you link it like that for them, explain it like that, and say, if you go straight on hormones right now and we haven't looked at you as a whole, you might be wasting tons of money and time, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to assume hormone replacement therapy isn't a viable option for you. So, you're not going to take that car, just for the guys out there, you're not going to take that car to the car show without it being polished and washed and this and that. You have to first prep your car. And it's you can find that with your patient. You can find the analogy that will work for them, but telling them how you first have to get yourself, the human body, to a state that those small little life things, as nutrition, fitness, and things like that, those are all fortified. And you tell them that, and then we can absolutely go right into hormones. But if XYZ is broken in your body and we don't address that first, hormones aren't going to be as effective.
So
and if you explain it like that to them, yeah, you're probably going to get some resistance back, and you can tell them, like, these are small steps that we're going to take, and this will lead to a bigger, better, positive outcome. Those hormones are going to be way more effective if you as a whole are performing at your best possible.
So true. What is your, there's a lot of small steps that, really can work to optimize the hormonal matrix in the body. What has been your tried and true, like you've seen the majority of your patients really, really respond well to implementing this step in their life?
Everybody's gonna hate me for this one, but there's two things I think are really important, and one is one is fitness, one is nutrition. Most people who start a good, active 3-4 times a week fitness routine at whatever level they're coming in at, if they start getting fitness in, we're going to start changing. We're going to change hormones. We're going to have dopamine. We're going to have all these things that are positive are going to happen in your life, not to mention cardiovascular, weight maintenance, and they're all interlinked. The next thing I would say, after establishing a really good exercise program, and literally that could be walking. I would prefer that folks start, especially at this age, strength training, even if that means just starting with your body weight for bone health and just increasing muscle mass. But nutrition's a huge one. Like I said, the environment is working against us at this point. The food sources are not clean like back in the 50s, when you could eat anything and you could eat bread and this and that, and it wouldn't bother you because everything was so clean. So now you have such a depletion of nutrients in your food that starting a supplementation program, you look at the word supplements, it simply means supplementing. So supplementing your diet, where the food sources are now deficient, you need to back that up to get what your body needs. People don't quite understand that. You're helping what's already naturally there. You're just trying to find out what you don't have enough of and why. But I would say starting a daily supplement regime and fitness are the two biggest things that can be a factor in getting to that hormonal balance.
Yeah, it's sometimes the simplest things, right, that really can elicit the most effects in the body.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so overlooked.
Well, I wanted to, obviously we here at Premier Research Labs are manufacturing dietary supplements at premier quality. And we have a couple flagship formulas that we use in women's health. And I would like kind of your perspective on how you might implement those. Two that come to mind, we have Radiant Woman, which is a fenugreek extract, right? And then we have as well our Fem Balance Premier, which actually has a chaste tree extract to that, right? And both very different in terms of how they impact circulating levels of hormones. But both I've seen a lot of really tremendous results with practitioners implementing those with clients. With your perspective, from your background, knowing those two ingredients, how would you kind of say, hey, this is going to be better for this patient versus this patient?
Well, after doing an assessment and listening, listening to your patient, the things that they don't write down, that's really the keys. When you hear, they're going to put all their information down, but then they're talking to you about, on the side, low libido, things like sexual desire, vaginal dryness. That is one of the biggest symptoms in women as they get into this perimenopause phase. And Radiant Woman is an excellent product for that. It will really help and support that part. So it's hot flashes, night sweats. That's a really good one for going after women whose estrogen is dropping, progesterone is dropping, testosterone. It supports those hormones. Fem Balance I like because that is really looking at the woman's menstrual cycle as a whole. And that could be anywhere up until you hit that one day that's menopause. That product for doctors, that's something that they can use with their patients all the way up until that point. It's just a very good fundamental formula for women in general.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of great success. It's one of those that really helps to normalize kind of the ebb and the flow.
Exactly.
I was actually before, coming on and recording this, I was thinking how, I personally will never go through menopause. Every woman on the face of the earth will. And that's a big change in life. I mean, that's a huge change in terms of just your natural rhythm of going through that monthly cycle. And I'm sure it's very emotionally vulnerable for a lot of women, and it's an unknown. It's a new frontier. How do you personally consult women through that change? And I know obviously we're supporting with diet and lifestyle strategies, working to help managing, limit maybe symptomologies, but it's the whole. It's a beautiful thing, truthfully, right? But it's also something that's, it's a new frontier for a lot of women, and they're losing that monthly cycle that's kind of been their metronome for life for decades upon decades. So yeah, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on, how you help people navigate that, because, for me as a male, I can't ever say that I will go through that, right? I'll lose testosterone eventually, but I can always just, take analogous, but I would never do that. I'll just take testosterone premium here, but from your research labs, but I really would love kind of your perspective on how to navigate that.
Well, it's one of those things where, again, it's individualistic. Some women sail through perimenopause and hit menopause, and there are very few symptoms. Some women, it can be really horrible time for them. And again, it's not talked about, or it hasn't been talked about until recently. And the Western version of menopause leans more towards looking at it as a medical issue, a disease, if you will, a problem. That's probably the best word to say it, that menopause is a problem and we have to suffer through it. I like to first approach patients and let them know from a mindset point of view that no, this isn't the biological end. And a lot of women see it as it's very psychological. You lose the ability to have children. What am I good for? There's nothing left. I've done my job. What am I supposed to do next? And it is it can be very depressing for women, and that can exasperate symptoms. Obviously, that could make something that's mild extremely painful or frustrating. So I try to get to the patient in a mindset saying, no, you're not done. You're pretty much a biological purpose on this planet. It's not over. The childbearing transition, that phase, that is over. But you now have a new life. So it's a rebirth. The Japanese do that. They do it so well. And Japanese women have so few menopause symptoms because they look at this next stage in life as a rebirth, as something to be celebrated and cherished. This part that your children are out of the door, and your job now is basically impart your wisdom on the next generations. So you do have a purpose. And I from that Eastern medicine background that I have, I really try to impart that on patients and get that mindset there. And then we can start looking at the symptoms and also letting them know that a majority of these symptoms for a majority of the women will go away once they get through menopause or are now postmenopausal, they'll start to resolve themselves. And that's where, continuing good diet, nutrition plays a really huge role. Just telling women that, especially at this, when I talk to women in more of the mindset stage, I say when our moms and our grandmothers and generations before us grew up, they bore children, the children moved out of the house, they had 20 years left, they raised the grandkids with them, and that was it. With modern technology, the way that we're taking care of ourselves these days, our lifespan has increased. So when I'm 54, technically I should be a grandmother. But as our lifespans are increasing and our children are having their children later in their 30s, sometimes even 40s, we come now with this span where the kids are out, there's no grandkids to take care of. And now we have this 10 to 15 years that women can start to focus on themselves and start nurturing themselves, as opposed to, they took care of the family, really getting into self-care. And that's where you can say, this could be the best you've ever felt in your life. People always tell you it's your 20s. This could be that time period where you really focus on yourself. You look great, you feel great, you're taking care of your diet, you're putting yourself first. When you give that sort of motivation to women, it's empowering. And they stop thinking like, I'm just going to shrivel up and die now. And they think, wow, I have some of the best years of my life. My responsibilities have shrunk, and I can be very selfish, if you will, about myself.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's the paradigm of nurturing and bringing life into the world, that's your purpose in so many ways. And then your body's no longer in that condition, but you have all this wisdom that now you can, all this experience that now you can transform another generation. You can support a whole new community.
Exactly.
I love that. And it makes me think of, I'm very, as well, very indoctrinated in Eastern philosophy, but ikigai, and like really having your purpose and allowing your life to really flourish and blossom, where it's not maybe just as linear to childbearing. Right.
Right.
I would love to kind of, as we've talked about, the menopausal transition, and I know it's always personal, right? And that's always when we go back to, supplement strategies and lifestyle and food and diet. But when you're looking at somebody working or moving through menopause, right? What have been your top tips to kind of help that transition? Obviously the reframing of what that era entails, but talk to us maybe a little bit about diet and lifestyle, and maybe even some supplements that you've really seen help really ease that transition.
I first and foremost get right into the, like I just touched on, self-care, taking time in that, if you lifestyle space, to take that time to allow yourself to just do something you enjoy, to find that quiet space. In this respect, we're working on that cortisol. We're really trying to bring the stress down and become really in tune with our bodies. Because if we stop and we're quiet and we listen, we're going to start to find some key things out. We're going to put the puzzle pieces together, if you will. And if your cortisol's down, your stress is going to be better. Immediately affects weight gain. So that dreaded menobelly, where we start to gain weight around our abdomen, and that has a purpose, because as our ability to produce estrogen decreases, as well as our levels, that area in the fat in the abdomen can produce estrogen. So our body tends to, because our body is so amazing. It's just such a smart, you talk about smart homes and smart technology. The body is the first and foremost in that. So it knows, okay, let's go do abdominal fat. Let's start producing our estrogen there. We know it'll work there. And with that cortisol, women are holding that belly fat. So I always tell them, first and foremost, let's get into self-care. Let's take time. Let's really get to know your body, yourself, your mind. And then, from there, let's get into the lifestyle things such as fitness. Let's really get your dopamine up. Let's get that adrenaline pump. Let's do things that make you feel good. Because when you feel good, you're a lot less likely to listen to the things that don't feel good that are going on in your body. They're 9 times out of 10 going to be a lot more mild. And that's my where I start with everyone. I mean, that would be my most important tip. And then getting into your nutrition. What you put in your body is what affects your body, and what you're lacking that you're not giving yourself, you need to figure out how and what that is.
Do you have favorite foods you like to recommend during that time?
Protein, more protein if you're women. People probably never want to hear me say that again, but it's true. It's very hard for women to get protein in. It's, because the foods because our hormones really will affect things like, oh, we want sweet, and now we want this, and now we want that. Most women don't look at a ribeye and go, yeah, I'm craving that. I do, but most women won't do that. And protein is so important to every aspect of your body. And building muscle as we age, women specifically, that's going to help you keep that weight down. That's going to keep your body, you're looking much, much better. The more protein, the more muscle you build, the better you're going to look, the better you're going to feel, the better, low libido is part of that is a mindset thing. So when you look and feel better, that's going to ease up a little bit for you. So protein is key. Making sure women get in plenty of fresh vegetables and fruit. We're not like reinventing the wheel on any of this, but hammering in our heads, let's get good quality vegetables, fruits, protein, some really good healthy fats are great. Don't be scared of carbs. Just be cognizant of where those carbs are coming from. So potatoes, sweet potatoes, anything that, is grown, it's okay. I find that's another big one. While we harp on protein, and we rightfully should, then we demonize carbs, and they have a very important role in the way our body systems. So a balanced diet, but high in protein is definitely where I go.
Yeah.
And a ribeye, that's my favorite.
And a ribeye, maybe that's the quote of the webinar or the podcast here. What about nutrient timing? A lot of people, making sure you get a plethora of different nutrients in, and obviously, focusing on protein. But what's your experience in nutrient timing, and perhaps integrating intermittent fasting into the protocol? Have you seen success with that? Do you typically advise that, or is it something you like to avoid?
My approach to everybody and everything is, if it works for you and you're feeling good and your markers are great, then that's the strategy that you should take. Typically with my female patients, intermittent fasting hasn't been as effective as it is in males. And that is primarily because we are set up to always be, feeding another human being. So our food stores have to be up at all times. That's just biologically how we're made. Males are not necessarily, they're not like that. They don't have to feed another human. So our body's constantly saying, okay, we need more food. We need more food. You burn so many calories when you're pregnant or breastfeeding. But I have had some patients that have had some really good success, and a lot of them are on the 12-12, where they fast for 12 hours and they then get their meals in 12 hours. And that can be very effective for them. But again, everybody's different, and you've got what works for you. That is what you should do. That's what you're going to stick to. In terms of supplements, yes, there are a lot of strategies. There's a lot of research out there on which supplements are taken better. Take magnesium at night if you want to, increase your quality of sleep. Get your protein in, to eat a certain amount of grams, 30 to 50 grams at each meal. Certain supplements you should take in the morning. Outside of anything that's not directed directly for a time of the day, such as sleep, take them when you remember to take them. That's always, I have patients that say, oh, I forgot to take this, that, and everything I was supposed to take in the morning, so I just skipped it. And I'll say, well, when are you most likely to remember to take the supplements that you need to take? Is it lunchtime? Is it morning? And that's when you should take them. And most people have a really good success with that.
Yeah. I personally, I always, I have a tea bar in my water in the morning and my stack of supplements right next to it. So it's always right there.
Oh
First
yeah.
thing upon waking, I'm like, okay, I've got everything I need to take right in front of me. Right. But, how do you easily, kind of hack the system so you're not having to necessarily think, it's just kind of more automatic, right? Once you've been made that recommendation.
My kids made fun of me. I have three boys. They're in their 20s now, but they would make fun of me because I'm just like everyone else. At night, right before I went to bed, I put all the supplements out. You get your coffee or tea, whatever it is that you're gonna have. You get that ready. The supplements are ready. Like I'm just gonna get it all done right now. And that's what worked for me because then the rest of your day you're here, there. You don't want to carry supplements everywhere. I'm not saying this is wrong, but it kills me every time someone shows up with the very plastic Ziploc bag of all their, nutritious supplements in the Ziploc bag. That's probably leaking estrogen into your supplements. But if that's what works, that's, give and take in life. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I got to have it all right in front of me. I like a routine. And that way I know I'm getting it all in.
It's the best way that I've experienced that. Talk to me, as we wrap up on today's episode, you've probably seen some tremendous success stories in your tenure as a practitioner. Are you willing, of course, to share a story that's anonymous, just to kind of help, you know, maybe showcase when you are really practicing these strategies, working through diet and lifestyle, and really implementing the right supplements at the right time, how that can really affect and support a patient's positive outcome?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to actually share my own personal story. And it is coming from, and again, I was a brand new out of school chiropractor and immediately got pregnant. Coming out of college, I was learning how to eat better, how to work out, how important these things were, but still, college student. And I became pregnant, and I wanted to have a home birth the first go around, and my midwife was great, but they're, midwives, they believe, and rightfully so, you have to grow a baby. Why are we trying to only gain 20 pounds? Let the body gain what it needs to gain. I really took that to heart, and I gained I started out at 132 pounds. I was 195 when I gave birth because I really just thought bagels were the best. I was trying to give my body the best quality stuff I could, but again, I was still learning that mentality. I didn't work out. I took very few supplements, and I mean, everything was great and turned out so positive. But I learned how I felt. I was tired. There were so many things that could have been avoided. So I myself, shortly after that, started working for a supplement company in Denver and started learning all these things about supplements and then fitness and the things that we need to take care of ourselves. So my second and third pregnancy, they were dreams. I'm proud to say they were not 195 pounds when I gave birth. I exercised. I had a supplement regime. My food was on point, and I always say I'm like the walking case for what you can do when you have not optimal nutrition fitness, and when you go to the opposite and you get everything on point, and what a difference it makes in your body.
It's, it's so true. And, I know a lot of fellow practitioners that, are listening in, they're their own guinea pigs in a lot of ways, and they're their own poster childs, right?
Yeah.
They've gone through it themselves, and now they're empowering others to, really support themselves through that. So it's kind of the nature, right, of why we get into the field. It's, we're on our own journey, and we want to share that with others. So thank you so much for sharing that and supporting women across the world in that regard. Um, Dr. Kelly, I just want to say thank you so much for being a steward of women's health and really supporting your clients, and really through this podcast and beyond, just advising women to better take charge of their health. How can people stay in touch with you, get engaged, and work with you if they're interested?
They can follow us. I have a chiropractic office in Charleston, South Carolina. So you can go right on methodhealthcenter.com, or you can reach out on any social media, my personal social media, but I leave it public because I love to talk to people, and I just love to help people. It's I am Kelfire, so it's letter I-A-M Kelfire. That's on Instagram. Happy to talk to anybody, give you, what guidance I can, point you in the right direction. And that's probably the best way.
As simple as that. As simple as easier, in my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
for those listening in, if you're a practitioner, working with women through any stage of kind of their life, or you're really just wanting to take charge of your life, I encourage you all to go to prlabs.com. You can open an account there, or you can apply for an account, or just learn all the wonderful things that we have to offer at edu.prlabs.com, as we have a whole new certification program where you can actually become a board certified physician, basically as a premier certified nutritionist specialist. So that being said, Dr. Kelly, thank you so much for your time and joining us on today's Premier Insights podcast.
Thank you, William.
And thank you for just supporting the world to a better tomorrow. So have a great rest of the day, and thank you all for listening.